How's it going, guys? And welcome to the showdown between the Empire, led by VOLKMAR the Grim, and the High Elves, who are going to be led by Teclis. So guys, let's jump right into this match and take a look at some of these builds. So in the front line, I do have a very heavy armor-piercing core. You can see I have 3 groups of the Greatswords, and they do have a nice bonus for infantry and really good armor-piercing values, and the High Elves actually are a fairly armored faction. If you look over here, you can see the White Lines have 90 armor, the Swordmasters of Hoth in the back have 90 armor, and had they brought the Dragon Princes, or even the Noble himself has 100 armor. So having that AP in kind of your core infantry, I think is very important. On top of that, the Greatswords are going to be supported by a couple groups of unbreakable troops. So I do have the VOLKMAR'S Sons as well as the Tattersouls, I think, on the other side. They're not going to be that great in this matchup. The Tattersouls get taken out so hard by missile fire, but if you can get them on a group of Spearmen, they should do pretty well for themselves. But I don't know. I'm pretty sure the Tattersouls would beat Spearmen, but I think like regular Flagellants might struggle with their melee defense. Not 100% sure. But on top of that, guys, like I said before, the Greatswords aren't really the best frontline troop, and the Empire doesn't have the strongest infantry, is essentially what I'm trying to say. But when you bring VOLKMAR the Grim atop his mighty Pimp Chariot, that really can change the game quite a bit. So VOLKMAR, if you look down here, he does have the Grand Hammer of Sigmar. So for 44 seconds, that's a long time. So if you have him like next to 2 Greatswords, he can really augment their melee attack by quite a bit. I think it's 26. And then he does also have the Grand Shield of Faith for just ward save of 22%. And the Grand Soulfire, so if you're expecting like a magical nuke or something, this can be really good. I've seen people use it to great effect against like Fate of Buna and things like that, or Ruination of Cities, or just all kinds of goodies. So it basically augments all nearby troops with 90% magic resist, and also does a little bit of damage. The damage is pretty kind of it's not that great, but still the magic resist is pretty good. On top of that, for my caster, I decided to bring an evil Gandalf. Well, I guess he's probably not really evil, this Grey Wizard. He's from the Empire, so he does have the Penumbral Pendulum, which is really strong, especially against High Elves. They tend to kind of march in with these formations of White Lions and Swordmasters and Spearmen that you can really chop down with this. And he does also have Enfeebling Foe. So VOLKMAR the Grim might seem like a bit of a strange pick in this matchup, but I actually think he's really good. If you think about it on paper, the things that can really take him out, I suppose, are dragons, which if you had brought a dragon, that'd be a little bit risky, but most people aren't going to bring dragons against the Empire from my experience because of all the guns and powders and nets, so it's a bit of a meta pick. On top of that, VOLKMAR does have 100 armor, so against High Elf archers, he's going to be very durable. He's great at running through infantry and kind of being a battlefield commander. And yeah, just all around pretty solid. I mean, the High Elf archers can't really do much to him. He does have magic resist, so magic damage coming his way, like Spirit Leech, isn't going to be that great. And he also heals himself. Definitely some fun stuff. So for my missiles, I wanted to try something a little bit different. So in case he brought dragons or any other funny business like that, I brought 3 groups of Outriders. And the Outriders are basically like mounted handgunners. But yeah, we'll see how they go. I mean, they're going to trade very poorly with archers, so I wanted to just use them to kind of flank around the back and just harass and, shoot down the White Lines and the Swordmasters and, more importantly, to take out the dragon. So we'll see how these bad boys do. That's pretty much it for my army. For my opponent, he does have a couple groups of the Illyrian Reavers in the back, so had I brought handgunners, I wouldn't have had anything to protect them because this build is very infantry heavy with a bunch of great swords. Let's see what else he's got. Yeah, Lothran Seaguard on the flanks, which is good. So he's using screening them as like spearmen and archers, which I think is really cool. Like, I can't afford to charge these guys with the Outriders. They would get massacred by the Lothran Seaguard. So he has 2 groups of those, 2 spearmen in the middle, a bunch of White Lines, a frontal line of the spearmen. In the back, he does have a noble with anti-large and armor piercing. So this guy is going to be one of the biggest threats to VOLKMAR the Grim. He does have a mage with high magic with Tempest and Apotheosis, so had I brought a Flying Lord, it could have been a little bit dicey. In the back, more White Lines, 1 group of Swordmasters of Hoth, and of course Benedict Cumberbatch with Nets and Flock of Doom. So my apologies for the long-winded introduction, guys. It's just a bit of an interesting matchup, and I wanted to make sure to get all my points across. So in the front, he's getting some pretty good Withering Fire in the Greatswords, or actually it looks like he's going after the Tattersouls and VOLKMAR'S Sons, which are the squishier of the targets. And what's great is Greatswords do have 95 armor, so against like High Elf Missile Fire, that doesn't really have the best AP. It's going to be pretty strong. But in the front, these Tattersouls are definitely taking a beating for Sigmar. They're going to have a little bit of trouble, but getting them into Spearmen is definitely a pretty big win for me. They do hit hard, but their melee defense is 60, and they're going to be real squishy. So they're going to get a nice charge bonus, and the High Elves aren't going to be able to get their charge bonus against infantry. It's only against large targets. So you can see the VOLKMAR'S Sons, or the Flagellants here, the Tattersouls, are going to be fighting, and VOLKMAR the Grim coming in with his mighty Pimp Chariot, just running through these guys, which is so great. And I think it did some pretty good damage. Yeah, it actually looks like it did. And that's really going to give the Greatswords a leg up, but it looks like a fiery convocation coming down from my opponent. Not sure which way it's going. I'm pretty sure it's going here. And he gets a nice roast right down my front line. And it definitely cooks a lot of my Greatswords as well as my Tattersouls, but it also killed most of his Spearmen. So a little bit of an even trade there for the most part. On the far side, it looks like a net of Amnitok going down, so he does get a net on my Outriders, which is really bad. But his timing was a little bit off. You can see the net is almost gone, and I'm really not going to take much damage at all. I should also mention that I do have 1 group of Demogryph Knights that I forgot to point out, but I get out of that net, and I'm going to get away without taking too much damage. I do get a banishment in the back line, so Volkmar the Grim on his Pimp Chariot actually does have banishment. Look at the damage. It's just tearing apart these white lines, doing huge, huge work for me. Definitely paying his dues. On the far side, I've kind of isolated some of these Lothran Sea Guards, so I had a lot more infantry than him, so the Great Swords are chasing them. I'm also getting some pretty good gunfire here. And basically, these guys with their mobility, like, even though they're going to get outclassed by archers, like, you can park them in spots that the archers can't reach, and they do shoot while moving. They can't shoot behind them, but they shoot at, like, what's in front of them and to, like, the right and left, but definitely, we're pretty solid in this matchup. So the front line, I was able to actually break through. So Volkmar the Grim did a really good job of kind of punching a hole in this middle pocket. You can see I was able to get some great swords here in the back, and they're definitely going to cleave these archers pretty quickly, especially with that bonus versus infantry. And the Denberg Knights just kind of looking for a target. He didn't have any elite cav, so I had a little bit of trouble finding a home for these guys. And you can see my opponent very, very on top of using the Nets of Amnitalk, and this is going to be real bad because the white lines are close. They're going to be able to get some pretty good AP on these Denberg Knights who don't have the best melee defense. It's actually only 30. I could have sworn it was higher, but I'm providing some overwatch here. You can see in the back my Outriders are getting some really good fire on the white lines. But regardless, yeah, actually, I didn't take much damage at all. I was able to get away, so I guess the timing wasn't as good as I thought. So the Denberg Knights are going to be coming in here and charging my opponent's troops, and this is going to be great. The Illyrian Reavers are pretty strong in melee. You can see my opponent getting a really, really nice charge, so well played to him. He's able to cleave some of my troops here, but it looks like there's going to be some treachery going down here. It looks like the Pendulum. So look at that. Pretty decent damage, actually, even against Cav, and it looks like they're going to be shaken. Denberg Knights and some of these great swords should be able to clean them up. So a very even battle at this point. Volkmar the Grim is getting a little bit low. My opponent has been chasing me with his Noble, as well as with these white lines, and that's a lot of armor-piercing damage and anti-large. So I'm having a bit of a rough time. On the far side, you can see my Great Wizard, Evil Gandalf, is going to be using Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma, which is kind of like a mini Fate of Being effect with a slow. Doing some pretty good work against these archers, but my opponent reacting very quickly and very well. You can see he actually pulls these Illyrian Reavers over here, and this is going to be pretty good. I mean, Illyrian Reavers, 30 melee attack against the, what is that on my Great Wizard? 30 melee defense. They should be able to get him. He has low armor, and this is like one of the best case scenarios for him. So very, very well played my opponent, kind of isolating my caster and taking him out for the most part. And Volkmar the Grim, guys, my opponent is also just all over the place, so he's really microing very effectively. He's been able to take out my my caster over here, and on the same note, he really put a ton of pressure on Volkmar the Grim, but thankfully my Denberg Knights, as well as the Great Swords, you can see, oh man, that's so cool, charging down the hill with their swords up, are able to fend off these white lines, and Volkmar the Grim is free from the reins of this this Noble over here, but the Noble looks like he's trying to push through, but the Great Swords with their AP and the Denberg Knights here should be able to kind of polish him off, if not fend him off from Volkmar. And like I said before, Volkmar is unbreakable. He also does have really good regeneration, so he's going to be able to heal for the most part. Looks like there's going to be another banishment going down. So the High Elves do have a bit of a pocket of infantry here. I do get a decent banishment, but unfortunately it kind of went the wrong way. But it might get into these archers. We're seeing it's kind of going just slowly, and then it goes off to the left and the right. It's kind of teasing me a little bit. But there it goes into the archers, munching that entire top of that formation. And guys, if we take a look at the balance of power, my opponent is actually ahead right now. So I'm a little bit behind. You can see he's getting a really good gank on Volkmar with that Noble, anti-large, pretty good charge bonus, all that kind of good stuff. I do use the Grand Soulfire, not for any particular reason, just to try and get some damage on whatever was nearby. But the Great Swords are able to intercept here, and they do get the Grand Hammer of Sigmar from Volkmar, which is going to put their melee attack up to a whopping 56. So they're pretty much going to connect pretty consistently with this Noble right here while that melee attack is active. You can see he's shaken, taking a lot of damage, and the battle's starting to look a little bit better for me. Up here on the high ground, the Denberg Knights are chasing down this this mage, which is great. Definitely being able to pick off that Apotheosis, that Perpetual Healing, the Shield of Safri, which is going to buff his entire army, is going to be a really nice pick for me. Now that that's taken care of, the Denberg Knights can come back, but Volkmar is still very threatened. You can see this this Noble. This looks like they're having a glorious duel. It's not as cool as when I had that one game where Volkmar was like fighting the Warp Chicken, and he was just like atop his altar, like yelling at this Chaos Demon, but pretty close. The Outriders in the back, though, in a really good position. They're able to position behind that Noble, get some really good withering fire on him. He's actually wavering, and I do also use the Enfeebling Foe from Lore of Shadows to lower his melee defense and melee attack, so that pretty much ensures that the Outriders might even be able to fight him in melee, so that's some good stuff. My opponent does get the Swordmasters of Hoth, kind of chasing down Volkmar on his pimp wagon. I'm trying my best to get away, but he's got a lot of pressure from those Nobles. You can also see that Benedict Cumberbatch is coming in for some of the fun, but he's not really great in melee. He probably honestly doesn't have enough stopping power to take out Volkmar. But Volkmar only has 800 HP, and you guys can see the bounce power is still very even. He has a couple groups of archers. It looks like 30 models back here, and let's go ahead and see what else he's got going on. So up here, I think I actually tried to chase him off the map with some of my great swords, but he was able to push them off, or I don't know even know how these archers ended up here. But regardless, he could pull those guys back, and that would definitely be tough for Volkmar. But right now, I'm basically just trying to get around and just take out whatever scraps I can with Volkmar, and you can see, oh yes, the mighty wagon comes forth. And I don't think he does a lot of damage to like Cav and whatnot, but these are just Illyrian Reavers, and I was trying to get my Outriders up and away so I could, potentially stabilize, but man, those Illyrian Reavers definitely do some pretty good work. I mean, for Skirmisher Cav, they have really, really good combat stats, but a very even battle right now, but it's looking pretty good for me. I do have some greatswords here that have just kind of won their battle. I have the Sigmar Sons as well as another group of 17 greatswords here that are kind of cleaning up the archers. The nobles are pretty much too low to fight. I mean, you can see this guy's 200 HP. The Outriders are providing some really good overwatch here, just riding up the hill, just getting some really, really good gunfire on this guy. And he's, what has he got, 100 HP? Yeah, so he's pretty much done for. He might even go down here. Hard to say. But Volkmar right now, in the meantime, is just going to be charging into some of these spearmen. Oh man, that it doesn't get much more perfect than this. Like when they just line up like bowling balls like this, and Volkmar can just ride through them all. With the Grand Hammer of Sigmar popped, he should be able to kind of it's still a little bit dangerous though, because they do have that anti-large. You can see his HP is actually going down somewhat quickly. I mean, they don't have the best AP to get through his 100 armor, but still. And it looks like they're actually going to get terror routed by Volkmar atop his chariot. And for the first time in the battle, guys, the bounce power is shifting in my favor. Volkmar the Grim is going to be popping that Grand Soulfire Bombardment, and did that just do 0 damage to those guys? I feel like it did. Man, that didn't do anything. But, you know, there still is the ever-present threat of Benedict Cumberbatch, or Doctor Strange, as we like to call him. But the Nevergift Knights and Evil Gandalf are, you know, pretty hot on his tail there. So I think what I actually end up doing here is using the Outriders to kind of just slam into him. And, you know, they're not going to beat him, you know, do a ton of damage in melee, but they pin him down for the most part. They allow the Demogryph Knights to catch up, who will massacre them. Demogryph Knights, 52 weapon strength, bonus versus large, and you can see that Benedict here is going to use a Flock of Doom. Bit of a last measure here, but for the most part, I'm pretty sure he's going to be offline. So some of those handgunners, or excuse me, Outriders up on the high ground, are able to kind of shoot down here at the White Lines, who only have like 18, 19 models. They do have 30% missile resist, but for the most part, the Greatsword should be able to clean them up. I think head-to-head, Greatswords probably win. Let me go ahead and look at the stat difference. So I guess it depends if Martial Prowess is active or not, but these ones do have some chevrons, so it's hard to say, but I wonder if Greatswords would beat White Lines. I feel like that would be an interesting thing to test. I mean, the bonus versus infantry does make a pretty big difference, and the White Lines don't have that, but what is the model count? So you have 90 here and then 75 on the White Lines. Okay, so the Greatswords do come in a higher model count, so I think they might be able to win that 1-to-1. Something I'll have to test after this game. But that's pretty much going to be it, guys. You can see that Benedict Cumberbatch is surrounded by Outriders and the Grey Wizard and Volkmar and all kinds of shenanigans, so that's probably going to be all she wrote. So, yeah, the build was good. Greatswords really performed. And, you know, Greatswords tend to lack a little bit in terms of, like, just, you know, equivocal units, or not equivocal, but units of the same tier on other factions. But when you add Volkmar the Grim and you're using the Pendulum and, you know, some other disruption abilities in the front line, they can actually perform pretty well. And against High Elves, it's pretty safe to bring armored units because, again, their archers don't really have the best AP. So Outriders were also decent. I actually like them quite a bit more than handgunners. Like, I didn't find I was getting obstructed. I could run up on hills. I could circle my opponent's army. I had to watch out for those Illyrian Reavers, but I was able to kind of move around and use the Demogryph Knights to screen, so it worked out pretty well. And Volkmar, of course, was a pimp as always. For my opponent, I liked his army. I definitely like the White Lines. Swordmasters, probably, I don't know if you really need those to take out Greatswords. White Lines do pretty good, and maybe a couple of archers. Like, I don't really know. This is a bit of a strange matchup, but I do like Teclis. I think nets are really good. White Lines are very solid. A couple spearmen is also useful for screening and whatnot. And I do think the archers are pretty good. I mean, they can shoot handgunners, crossbowmen, they can shoot Outriders. There's a lot of utility there, but yeah, very well played to my opponent, a Spatula. Look forward to running into you again on ladder, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this Empire vs. High Elf game. Have an excellent night, guys, and take care.